Hello and welcome to this session, which is covering the Community-Led Local Development Fund for 25-26. Today's session, I'm going to cover the background to the fund priorities, the eligibility, the application form, the tips for applying, and any further information. Before we move on to the background to the fund, just to introduce myself, my name's Jane Stanistreet and I'm the Head of Resource and Development at Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway. And I have responsibility for the funds that Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway manage on behalf of others. So just to remind you that the Community-Led Local Development Fund is a Scottish Government fund that was introduced to replace the EU LEADER programme. In Dumfries and Galloway, Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway were appointed as accountable body for the CLLD fund back in June of 2023. The responsibility for the CLLD fund sits with the local action group, the LAG, and they are responsible for the overall management and strategic direction of the CLLD fund. As explained, the fund is being administered by TSDG. And the total funding currently available for Dumfries and Galloway for this next financial year is £317,101.32. And this has been allocated as follows. We've got a small revenues grants programme. So this is for projects requesting support of up to £5,000. There's a minimum of £30,000 and a maximum of £50,000 available in this pot. Our main capital grants programme. There's a total of £233,563 of capital funding in the main capital grants programme, with a maximum of £53,500 of revenue funding to support the delivery of the capital project. And I'll go into a little more detail later on in this session. So just to remind you about the aim of this fund, CLLD aims to address social, environmental and economic issues and includes actions affecting rural and island communities to drive community action on climate change, to enhance rural services and facilities, including transport initiatives, to enhance natural, cultural heritage, tourism and leisure, support food and drink initiatives, to build cooperation with similar groups in Scotland, UK and Europe, and to empower communities to exchange learning and knowledge with each other, realise potential and build opportunities for all. So the fund priorities have remained the same as last year, and the fund is available to support projects that contribute to the delivery to at least one of the following priorities. The first is supporting community facilities and eligible organisations to contribute to the achievement of net zero. The next is sustaining, improving and adding initiatives in rural communities that are most isolated, most disconnected, most in need of investment or most likely to experience inequalities. The next is helping communities to address the cost of living crisis and eradicate poverty for individuals and families. And finally, enabling communities to carry out research, community needs assessments and feasibility studies as part of the local place plan development. Now, these fund priorities in Dumfries and Galloway align with Scottish Government's current priorities, which are eradicating child poverty, growing the economy, tackling the climate emergency, and improving public services. So through the supporting community facilities, to contribute to the achievement of net zero. This is around tackling climate change. So it will enable community facilities to make changes in their pursuit of becoming carbon neutral. The next fund priority links to the growing the economy and eradicating child poverty. And the funding should support activities which enable small communities to avoid further loss of amenity, such as community transport, meeting places, childcare, leisure and support facilities, so building community strength and cohesion. The next one is linked to eradicating child poverty. And this should enable service providers to deliver their support to the most vulnerable and in need families across the region. It should provide some financial security for service providers to continue to deliver essential services. It should also enable current service providers to deliver interventions that contribute to the eradication of child poverty, to carry out pilot projects to test change before rolling out a new service. And finally, this is around tackling climate change, growing the economy and eradicating child poverty. So it's aimed at activities which will identify and assess community needs in advance of the production of a local place plan. Community groups will be funded to conduct or commission consultation and engagement work and to participate in place planning process with confidence. So when we look at the timescales, the fund is due to open to applications on the 5th of May, and the deadline for completed applications is 12 noon on the 2nd of June. There is no exceptions to this. The eligible funding date, so when your activity and your project can take place, is between the 1st of August 2025 and must be completed by the 31st of March 2026. With that in mind, consideration does need to be given to the time pressure and have identified that capacity is available to deliver the project by the 31st of March 2026. When we move on to eligibility, this hasn't changed. And these are the legal statuses of organisations that are eligible to apply. So applications are encouraged from rural Dumfries and Galloway. So applications will be considered from organisations based in Dumfries. That's because they've got a population of over 10,000. In this case, applicants should confirm that the majority of the beneficiaries live outside the boundaries of the town. For capital projects, applicants will be required to be incorporated and have an asset lot or equivalent in your constitution or your governing document. There's one application per project and there is no limit to the number of applications you can make. Here is a list of the revenue expenditure items that are eligible for you to apply for. And the ineligible expenditure is exactly what you'd expect and has not changed from previous rounds. So how much can you apply for in the small revenue grants programme? This one's really straightforward. Applications can be made for revenue projects up to £5,000. There's a minimum of £30,000 available in this pot and a maximum of £50,000 available. When we move on to the main capital grants programme, these are for capital applications that can be made for projects from £5,001 up to a maximum of £30,000. There's £233,563 worth of capital funding available. Now, the application that you make to the main grants capital programme only can include up to 20% of eligible revenue costs. By that we mean the revenue costs must relate entirely to the capital project being applied for. And we've put aside up to £53,500 to support that. There are no match funding requirements, meaning you can apply for up to 100% of your project costs within the maximum application limits identified. So we've had some further guidance from Scottish Government around capital expenditure. And it's defined as grant money spent to acquire, upgrade, and maintain physical assets such as property, plants, building, technology, or equipment. The categorisation of some costs, such as professional fees and staff costs, will depend on the exact nature of each. Got some examples for you now. So example one is a development phase of an affordable housing project. So new for this year, capital costs could include professional fees for site appraisals, business plans, survey evaluations, ecology reports, solicitors' legal titles, whereas project management costs would likely to be categorised as revenue. The cost for feasibility studies would generally be categorised as revenue, although if the grantee can demonstrate that the study directly contributes to the creation or improvement of the asset, and if it's in line with your local accounting standards, it can be recognised as capital. So example 2 is a community hall redevelopment. So the capital costs again could include professional fees for architect service, principal designers, engineering, energy consultants, structural engineering, quantity surveyors and planning assessment. The materials and equipment could also be categorised as capital, for example, purchase and installation of heaters, replacement of lighting, table and chairs, painting walls and window frames, landscaping outside space, carpeting and flooring, whereas the staffing and operational costs of the hall would be categorised as revenue. Example 3 is a community composting project. So capital costs would include the purchase of all the equipment, whereas the staffing cost to support the composting activity would be categorised as revenue. And then finally, example 4 about kitting out a training suite or a hub. So the capital cost would include the purchase of IT equipment and software, tables and chairs, renovation of kitchen and toilets, and replacement of flooring. Now, Scottish Government says around the capitalisation thresholds and when you want to start thinking about an item being capitalised. So by setting the threshold, it can avoid items of immaterial value being classified as capital expenditure and assist with the management of the asset register. This enables capital items to be categorised as revenue if the cost is below the threshold, and I will move on to the threshold in a moment. But it's important to note that a decision can be taken by TSDG to retain the capital categorisation where it's under the threshold, assuming that the costs meet the definition of capital. So here is the table which explains the capitalisation thresholds. So once you reach these limits and you're spending over these amounts, they automatically become capital expenditure. So that's everything about the fund, and what I want to do now is just take you quickly through what you can expect to see when you look to make an application. So the application form is split into sections. Now you can save your application on our system and come back to it at a later date. I would suggest you do this, but make sure you allow enough time to do this so you can go back, check everything before you press submit. So section 1 is about contact details for your organisation. We want you to provide details for the secondary contact within your organisation so that we can communicate with either of you about your application. This is really important that the contact details that you provide, the people know about it, can talk about the application, can provide any support that's needed, and is available over the summer months when your application will be assessed. Section 2 asks about what type of organisation you are, how many staff, volunteers you have, along with a brief description outlining your main activities, the services you provide, and to whom. Section 3 is all about finances, so tell us about your income, who looks at your account, give us your bank account name, sort code, and account number. If your bank account name does not match your organisation name, we may deem you ineligible. We have provided a text box for you to explain this to us, and we will assess these on an individual basis. So section 4, we're starting to get into the detail now of the project. So you need to tell us the project name, the start and end dates. Remember those eligible dates from the 1st of August this year to the 31st of March next year. We need you to confirm that you have considered the time pressure and that this project is ready to go and you have the capacity to deliver project and its outcomes by the 31st of March 2026. We're asking you to tell us about how many beneficiaries will benefit from this project. And then we also want to know how have you calculated this figure. So please give this some thought before you put your number in there. We're looking for geographical postcodes of your beneficiaries and that the confirmation that the majority of them live outside of either the Castle Douglas or Dumfries town centres. And then you need to tell us which type of application, whether you're making it for the small grants, the small revenue grants, or the main capital grants. It also needs to be clear which funding, that fund that you're applying for, and please make sure you put in separate applications if you are putting in multiple applications. So the next bit, we need you to tell us about the project and the activities you would like to deliver. We want you then to tell us about how you know the project is needed, and then tell us about this difference the project is going to make to your beneficiaries. Now we want you to identify which one of the CLLD fund priorities your project will address. Only choose the priorities you directly address. Those priorities chosen will be the basis of how your project is evaluated. You do not get more points for picking more than one priority. If it hits a couple, choose a couple, but choose the ones that your project directly addresses. Each priority that you've chosen, you'll have to explain to us how the project will address that priority. And then the final question is describe how you're going to measure and evaluate your project's impact. Section 5 is all about the budget. You need to tell us the total cost of the project and how much funding you are applying for. You are required to confirm that this project can't be funded from elsewhere. If you are not applying for the full amount of the total project costs, you need to tell us where the rest of the funding is coming from. You need to tell us if the capital project can go ahead, if the revenue element, if you've applied for it, cannot be funded if you are making a capital application. You're required to provide us with this budget breakdown. You can group some expenditure into single budget lines, so utilities, for example. If requested, you do need to be able to provide details on how you have calculated that figure. Please provide as much detail, even if it's in brackets, into your budget. The value for money is a scoreable question, so it's important that you provide enough detail in there for the assessment panel to be able to assess whether or not it's value for money. This funding is subject to meeting the principles of Fair Work framework. And Fair Work is work that offers effective voice, opportunity, security, fulfilment and respect, balances the rights and responsibilities of employers and workers, and that can generate benefits for individuals, organisations and society. You will need to confirm that you will adopt this framework to receive a public sector grant. If you are applying for capital costs, you are required to tell us about your exit strategy for this project, and you will find your dissolution clause within your constitution. So please make sure this matches. In section 6, you need to confirm that you have the appropriate policies and procedures in place to deliver this project. You need to confirm that your organisation has a safeguarding policy if your core work or the project you are applying for involve children or vulnerable adults. You need to confirm that your organisation has an EDI policy, and you need to confirm that you will adopt the Fair Work principles. You need to confirm that if your grant request is for any items costing more than £3,000, you're going to obtain at least 2 quotes for each of those items. We do understand that in rural communities, this can be incredibly difficult. So reach out to us and speak to us if you are having any troubles around this. You do need to upload a copy of a recent bank statement with your bank name, sort code and account number. If you don't have the bank statement available electronically, please submit it. Submit your application, then email it as soon as possible to us at clld@tsdg.org.uk. All your documents must be received within 5 days of submission or by the application deadline, whichever is sooner. And then finally, you need to declare that the information contained in this application is correct, that your constitution or your governing document submitted is the most up-to-date version adopted by the members of the above organisation. Really importantly, that you are authorised to make the application on behalf of the organisation and with whom it has been discussed, and that you accept that the decisions made by the LAG are final. Finally, you sign the application form, put your name in and the date, and you press submit. You then get an opportunity to review your application. You need to scroll all the way down to the bottom and then click submit. Your application is not submitted until you get a thank you. Your application has been submitted to the fund message. Everything will go white and it will be a thank you message. That is when your application has been submitted. So that's everything about the fund, and what I want to do now is just to take a few moments just to run through a bit of advice when making your application form. So the first thing is I want you to consider whether this opportunity fits with your overall vision, purpose, mission, and or your strategic plan. Are you eligible to apply? Be really honest. Does the delivery of this project fit with your current skill set and offer? Are you able to deliver the project within the timescale? Be really honest about that. Consider all of those things before you decide to make an application. Not every opportunity is the right one to follow. When you're describing your activities, remember the 5 W's, the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why. So who are these activities for? Where are the activities? Where are they being delivered? When are they being delivered? And why are they being delivered in this way? Remember that change is a logical result of an activity, and that's why you are running this project. Understanding the basics. So think about how much you write isn't related to how much money you're seeking, and we have got limits on some of the sections, so be really clear and concise with your answers. There's no one size fits all. Don't be tempted to cut and paste. Take the time to review to ensure you are hitting the eligibility. And there's no such thing as the perfect answer. Be honest, we really appreciate that, and we can see it as well. So when you're thinking about structuring your communication and when you think about doing your application, there's 4 golden rules that we go by. And so golden rule number 1 is answer the question. So ensure you answer the question that we are asking, and make sure you answer all aspects of the question asked. You will see that the first question that we ask is, tell us about your project and the activities you want to deliver. So that's a 2-part question. Use the guidance. Please read the guidance. Please don't just sit down to the application and start completing it. Read the guidance and cross-check it at the end. Golden rule number 2 is to make it an easy read. So plan your approach. Create sections and subsections, because this will assist you in structuring your document. It helps you break up large sections of text, and it helps guide the reader through. Remember, all the assessors are reading 100+ applications, so plan your approach and make sure it's an easy read. Start with that clear summary and then expand into the word count. Don't start the other way. Don't put large amounts of text into sections and then realise you need to cut it down. Start really clear and then expand if you feel you need to. Minimize that repetition, make each answer stand alone and don't cross-reference. As I said previously, see above answer. You're likely to score 0 if you do that. Each answer needs to stand on its own. And don't exceed the word limits when directed. As I said, start with a clear, simple statement and expand if you need to. Golden rule number 3 is be clear and concise. So use appropriate and correct language. So echo our language and terminology. Don't use internal jargon and abbreviations. Please don't make any assumptions of knowledge that just because something that you use as abbreviated in your line of work means something to us. Don't waffle on, be really specific. Don't use any generalizations or assumptions of knowledge, as I mentioned previously. So don't, it's widely known that. You really do need to spell it out and be really specific. Make sure you check your spelling and your grammar, because this is really important, and then check it again. And when you've got to the end of it, get a friend to check it. Golden rule number 4 is consistency and completeness. So use context to demonstrate wider relevance. So highlight skills, expertise, track record. Use relevant data or documents which support your case carefully. Please don't put links in to expect us to read anything, expect us to look at something. We're assessing every application based on the information provided. So make sure everything, any information that you do use, supports your case really carefully. Be consistent in your language and style. And I mean this if you are cutting and pasting, and minimize that repetition. And the last bit of advice I'm going to give to you is to walk away and come back another time, but to make sure that you do allow time for this. You can, as I said at the start, you can log back in, save it and come back. Please make sure you're aware you've got to set a password. So make sure, write it down, make sure it's something that you can remember, and double check your email address when you're putting it in. So just talk to you very briefly about your budget. You need to make sure that you've got a robust budget which backs up your activity. We need to be able to look at the answer to what activities do you want to deliver, and then have a look at the budget, and that budget backs up and will pay for the activity that you've talked about. So make sure you've got that strong, comprehensive budget in place with clear allocations using full cost recovery model. Bring in your finance staff at the start of the application, not the end. Really think about value for money. This will be assessed against the activities you want to deliver, against how much you are asking for, whether or not it is good value for money for the fund. And then finally, the final check back is around clarity and completeness. Make sure it's plain English, that you've answered all the questions, that you've got a budget which backs up activities, and that all your attachments are ready to go. Make sure your timing is right. We won't pay for anything retrospective, that the timescales of the start date, the end date, your project delivery dates, when decisions are going to come through, that all these timescales allows enough time for you to be able to respond. But really importantly, please make sure you meet that deadline of the 2nd of June at 12 noon, which is lunchtime. So the fund opens on the 1st of August with a deadline of the 2nd of June. The assessment panel will convene towards the end of June. So from the deadline passing, for the next couple of weeks, you should expect to hear from a member of the team as we go through eligibility with your application before it's presented to the panel at the end of June. Decisions will be expected towards the end of July, with payments made shortly after that. The guidance, please read it, and the link to the online application form are available on our website, which is www.tsdg.org.uk/CLLD, and our email address is clld@tsdg.org.uk. I hope that you found this session useful, and that just leaves me to wish you the very best of luck with your application, and please do reach out if we can be of any assistance. Thank you very much indeed.